Gentleman from California is recognized for 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you very much. Thank you to our witnesses. Want to just get back to where we're here. This is, of course, another effort, and this hearing is really about demonizing migrants and, again, smearing Secretary Mayorkas. Professor Perlstein, thank you for being here. Are there any grounds, again, for impeaching Secretary Mayorkas under the Constitution?
I don't believe the Constitution supports impeachment in this case.
Thank you. And as far as I'm concerned, that's the most important question and really gets to the heart of why we're here today. We talked a lot about the fentanyl crisis and fentanyl in this committee and today, but the fentanyl crisis we know is a tragedy. But we also, it's important to remember who didn't end the fentanyl crisis. That was actually Donald Trump. Mr. Chairman, I ask unanimous consent to introduce this article titled Synthetic Opioid Overdose Deaths Soared While Trump Was President. I also would like to, into the record, put this other article, Opioid Crisis, Critics Say Trump Fumbled Response to Another Deadly Epidemic. And I bring these documents up because I think it's really important to note that during Trump's presidency, the fentanyl crisis had already been a huge challenge across this country. In fact, Trump said before the 2016 election, he said the opioid crisis was destroying lives and shattering families. And he said, quote, "We are going to stop the inflow of drugs into New Hampshire and into our country 100%. 100%. Trump promised. In 2017, Trump's first year in office, more than 42,000 Americans died from overdoses linked to heroin, fentanyl, and prescription opioids. So there was a huge fentanyl problem when Donald Trump was president. The administration didn't even bother to issue a national strategy on fentanyl in his first 2 years in office. So I think it's crazy that the majority is trying to turn this into a public health crisis that somehow new or began during the Biden administration. Unfortunately, this is about much larger issues that we have, because our conversation today isn't about the Constitution or the law. It's not even about securing the border. The majority is not interested in solutions. Donald Trump, as always, has said the quiet part out loud when he said immigrants, and I quote, are poisoning the blood of our country. As we know, this is rhetoric that can be compared to Hitler and the kind of rhetoric that he used. Extremists here in Congress also continue to push issues like the Great Replacement theory. And we should be clear, immigrants are some of the most patriotic and hardworking people there are in this country. I just heard a committee member say, and I quote, that they are not prepared to be assimilated, talking about immigrants. I'm an immigrant. I think I'm pretty well assimilated here. I am a member of Congress. And so I think it's very un-American to attack and demonize migrants the way that some in this majority continue to do. Immigrants aren't here to poison or victimize the American people. I also want to just touch on this issue of crime. Some in the majority continue to talk about crime, and crime is a horrific tragedy. Clearly, I feel horrible for our witnesses that are here that have lost members of their family. But let's look at real data as well. Both undocumented and documented immigrants are much less likely to commit crimes or be incarcerated than native-born American citizens. Our border communities are often safer from violent crimes than many interior cities. And according to FBI crime data, crime in border communities was measured to actually be 15% lower than the national average. So from a crime perspective, more crime is being committed by American citizens than those folks that are undocumented or that are immigrants. Democrats also want an orderly and secure border. We want real solutions to the fentanyl crisis, but we need to understand the problems we're trying to solve need solutions, legislation, not impeachments of the secretary, and certainly not impeachments of President Biden. The idea that any of these problems will be solved by the border alone, I think, is also crazy. These problems have existed for decades. We haven't had immigration reform or any sort of policy in over 30 years. And without legal pathways, we will never have an orderly border. That is also a fact. And we can't have a conversation with a presidential candidate, a former president, who thinks immigrants are poisoning the blood of our nation, who thinks that we should build a moat with alligators along the border, who thinks that we should put spikes on the wall that he's trying to build, who has said that we should shoot migrants in the legs as they're crossing the border, who thinks we should send missiles into northern Mexico. These are the ideas being offered by the likely nominee of the Republican Party and by many on this committee and in the Republican majority. We need to have real solutions. We don't need Donald Trump's horrific policies to come back to this country, and we certainly shouldn't be impeaching Secretary Mayorkas. And with that, I yield back.